Hello again, it's Roy Edwards with Capital Presence. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to create a site within SharePoint. So first, getting started with SharePoint Online. Office.com is your landing page, so that will be the initial point where you start. From there, you'll be able to select the various applications, and SharePoint is one of those applications within your hub. Um, so you will only be able to see the sites within SharePoint that you have permissions to. You can create a group of sites. You can favorite uh, your sites for ease of access. Um, so you would have to talk to an administrator if you are not an administrator on getting access to any sites that you cannot see. In the top left, you'll always have a waffle, as what I like to call it. This is kind of your menu within the O365 and Microsoft environment. When you click that waffle, you'll see a drop down of applications. So here on my screen, you see Office, OneDrive, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, SharePoint, Teams, so on and so forth. You see an admin because I am an admin. What applications you see in this waffle will have to do with the permissions and the level of enterprise licensing. I have an E5 license, so I will see all the applications. But if you have an E1, you might see less applications, and if you're not an administrator, you'll see less as well. Another way to access these applications is on your splash screen for Office.com. That's the what you see there where it has the two lines. So that says good morning, uh, and then it has the list of apps underneath it. So still all the applications where, and then again, if there's an application that you're looking for that is not on this screen, you can always click view all applications and it will bring you to a list of all applications. But for today's video, we're going to be focusing on SharePoint. So once you click SharePoint, you'll get to a SharePoint landing. It will show you to create news posts, or it'll give you the option to create a site. Those are the two options you'll see at the top banner, as indicated in that screenshot right there. So to create a site, you simply click on the Create Site Plus button, or on the words. That button will then prompt you to the next step in creating a site. The landing page will also have news and other sites you have access to here. And again, if you do not see the Create Site button, you have to contact your administrator because you do not have permissions to create a site. This is very important. Not everyone can create a site, and you can control the permissions to who can create a site. So if you do not see this Create Site button, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. You just need to reach out to your administrator and see if you can be granted the permissions to create sites. So once you push that button, a flyout window will come and you'll see these two images. You'll be prompted to choose either a team site or a communication site. And it's important to know a little bit about what the two are and the differences behind them. So a team site is for team collaboration. It's for sharing documents. It's for creating and generating workflows. It's extremely easy to customize. You can open it up in SharePoint Designer. You can install third-party applications. It will also create a team group if you wanted to uh, within the O365 environment with the permissions granted on some of the next steps that we're going to talk about. So that's what a team site is. It's less UI UX friendly, which is user interface, user experience. So it's less user friendly as far as the visuals are concerned, but you can do a lot more with it. It's meant for collaboration on documents. Then we have the communication site. That's the next one over. The communication site, they're for mostly announcements, they're for landing pages, for hubs, that sort of a thing. You have a much better user experience. It has a lot of drag and drop functionality. It has a really big hero that gives it works as like a slider or it works as a tiles. So it makes it really easy to navigate for your employees or whomever is using that specific site. It's not compatible with SharePoint Designer straight out of the box, meaning you can't customize it with workflows and some of that other features out of the box. That's what OOTB means. Um, but you can write a script. You can have an administrator write a script that enables it to be used with SharePoint Designer. It is mostly for announcements, blogs, and a general landing page. We use communication sites as our initial landing page. And then as you navigate through the site, we build team sites underneath communication pages, or we have team sites out that live outside of the communication site that we then link to, so we get the best of both worlds. So that's a little bit about the difference. So you would then choose which one you wanted, either a team site or a communication site. We're going to choose team site. It will then fly out another window for you to prompt. You need to name it, right? Every site needs a name. So it's important to note that the name here will become part of the URL. You can specify otherwise to avoid some of the pesky things that come along with names with spaces and dashes and things like that. So if you were to name it my space test space site, or the example that I have here, team space site, if you do not specify a different URL path name, it will become team percentage 20 site in the URL. So it would be whatever your domain name is. So ours is Capital Presence. So capitalpresence.sharepoint.com/team site, but it would be team percentage 20 site. It does that because the way that Microsoft reads a spacebar is actually a percentage. It reads it as percentage 20. So if you want to get rid of that, you can still call it team site, but then in the URL name you'd have to specify that you just want it team site, no spaces, to make it easier to get to. The team site will be shown throughout the environment, so it will be one of the banners that will be shown. So it's important to create the site with something that means something to whoever is going to be using it. The shorter the better is a good practice here, um, because again, it does change the URL length. And when you start really diving really deep into SharePoint, there is a character length within a URL. So the URL can't live on forever, unfortunately. So when you start deep diving and your URL grows, it's important that you always keep things short so that you can make best use of that the length of your URL. So we've named the site. We're going with team site. Let's go on to the next step. The next step is the privacy and URL settings. So like I talked about before, you can change the URL to not include those percentage 20s, or if you wanted to name the site my fun team site, you can abbreviate that to be, what would that be, MFTS, in the URL, so people could access it that way. For privacy, this is where you name who is going to have access to your team site. You can change this after it's created. So if you didn't know who was going to be part of this group, you could always just include yourself and then later add more people. But you can include group email addresses. That will create a group permissions environment. But it's important to note that anyone that you put within this group email addresses area will be and will populate a group that will be kind of the backbone of permissionings that will live through the O365 universe. So if you're in Microsoft Teams, if you've given them access to this team site and you've told this team site to create a group, then they will then have access to the team page within Microsoft Teams. And then anytime you'd email this group, anytime you'd interact with this group, the notifications and whatever it is that you're sharing would then go to anyone placed in this group. I'm not going to dive any more into it than that because we are going to have a video a little bit later on permissionings and creating these groups. So if you're interested in that, then be on the lookout for that video as far as permissions and groups are concerned, because right now all we're trying to do is create a site, right? But it is important to note that anyone you place here will interact with those groups. The site address is how the team site can be shared and accessed. So that's the URL. So everything within the O365 environment is accessed through the URL. So you would have to go through it in either Edge or Chrome or Firefox or IE if you still use that, and you'd have to type it in through there. So it's important to note that anything that you create through the site address, that you're keeping it in a friendly way of typing it in, right? No long, we talked about in the last slide, no long site addresses or URLs. And again, the privacy settings can be amended later. So you could just, in creating this, just put yourself and then change it as you go on. So let's go on to the next. So now the next step here is choosing site members. So within those groups that we've created in the front, there are edit, full control. Those are the overall administrators of the group. Now you can add additional members within these privacy settings to be part of the site so that you could grant them read access, you can grant them edit access. This is separate than that group. So you can create a group and then you can grant additional access that will not be a part of that group that lives outside of the O365 groupings environment. So again, we'll go deeper into that in a permissions video along the line, but group email addresses will populate a group within the O360 environment for ease of sharing and editing later. I just talked about that. And then by adding additional owners, these members can have what's called full control, and they'll be able to grant rights. They'll be able to make master changes. They'll be able to do some sort of things that will help you manage your environment. But you definitely only want to keep maybe one or two uh, administrators and full control members or a group of people that you trust. You don't want to just give out full control rights to everybody. It's best to keep them at edit or contribute if they don't need administrator or developer permissions. Adding members will grant the people access to add them. It will also add them to that group if you add them to the group for communication through emails, Teams, and the rest of the 365 environment. Again, I will go over more of that in a later video as far as what all that means, but just keep that in the back of your mind that these people that you're initially granting access to when creating a team site will have access throughout the O365 environment. So after we filled all this out, we've named who our administrators are, who has full control. Let's go on to the next step. So now your site has been created. So now you are enabled to work wherever. You can store documents. You can access them from anywhere at any time. And then all of this that you just created, those groups, those permissions, those teams, that is what SharePoint and the O365 environment is all about. It's really the backbone. It's how you can easily share documents, how you can chat, it's how you can meet, it's how you can email groups of people at once. It's really the backbone of what makes SharePoint and O365 so important and really so cool going into this. No other company in the cloud right now has something like this where you can share across platforms and software. It's really cool based upon this Azure AD. You can track down documents securely, access data through the internet, and it's all secured by Microsoft. It's all run on Microsoft Azure, which is safe and compliant and secure, and you will never have to worry about your documents getting in the wrong hands as long as you are tracking those permissions. So now you can work and access documents wherever there is internet. Like I said, you can access documents. You can grant access documents. So now that you've created your site and gone through those steps, now you can go into the permission settings and you can access documents, or you can share specific documents, folders, or specific areas of your site. You can now really control the permissions, which again we'll go over in a later video. So now you have a site. Uh, you can add lists, you can add libraries, you can create calendars, you can create a blog, you can create news areas. You can really do anything. The team sites and communication sites are really cool. Um, and again, the permissions of these can be amended later. Um, but you can really create anything. Using this lists and libraries, you can create specialized applications. A list is essentially a database. That's our next video actually, is how to create a list within SharePoint, which is really a database that you can use to create applications or anything within the SharePoint environment. So sites can be deleted. They can also be renamed at any time. Deleting a site will delete those groups within the O365 universe. So you have to remember kind of what all is attached to those team sites. There's no real way of getting it back. It will prompt you when you're deleting it to say that this is going to wipe out everything that has associated with these team sites. So you have to be careful with that. And you can rename them. So if you named it, team site and you forgot that M and it just says T site, you can go back in and add the M without deleting the site and then and then creating a new one. You cannot change a team site to a communication site or vice versa, a communication to a team site. So that's really important to note. Once you've decided what your site that you're creating is going to be, you have to stick with it. You can put a team site underneath as a subsite of a communication site, but again, if you don't have your administrator run that script that enables SharePoint Designer, you wouldn't be able to use SharePoint Designer on that team site. Once you create it as a team site or a communication site, It really is what it is at that point, and you just have to live with it, delete it, or start over. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email us support@capitalpresence.com. We are at Capital Presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Again, if you want to reach out to me specifically, go to capitalpresence.com, click on my friendly face, and I will be there. So until next time, guys, I will see you then, and be on the lookout for our how to create a list, how to create a library, and then that permissions video that I referenced only 5,000 times. Thanks for watching.